Hey, this is Ryan, and today I'll do a quick demonstration on how to launch a Kubernetes cluster with EKS. EKS is AWS's managed Kubernetes service. They have a managed node group, so here's some documentation on that, but basically what that does is you don't need to separately provision or register the EC2 instances, and instead you can just create, update, or terminate the nodes for your cluster with a single operation. The nodes are provisioned as a part of the EC2 auto-scaling group that's managed for you by EKS. So that way you can select the minimum and maximum amount of instances that you need. Before we begin, the first thing you need is to download AWS CLI. We also need kubectl and EKS-ctl. Okay, so I'm in the command line in Visual Studio Code. What I want to do is deploy a cluster to AWS. It's going to show up here under Amazon EKS, and it's also going to use a CloudFormation stack. So there's two ways that we can do this. We can either type out everything on the command line with all of our parameters, or we can use these configuration files, the .yaml files. This will already have all the parameters pre-configured, and you can just call that out. That will be a little bit easier, but for now, I think we'll just start with the command line. All right, let's run our EKS cluster command. We'll just do this from the command line. So EKS-ctl create cluster. We'll name this EKS-ctl RyanDallas. Our node group name, I'll name that ng RyanDallas. And node type, we want a t3.micro and 2 nodes. All right, so it's 8:25 a.m. So it'll probably take about 10 or 15 minutes. So I'm gonna let this run. Okay, I'm back. That took a lot longer than I thought. So we started at 8:25 and at 8:43, this is when our first CloudFormation template finished. It created our cluster. And then at 8:43, we launched our second CloudFormation template. Took about 5 minutes, and that finished our node group. If we go to EKS, press refresh, this is our cluster. All right, so that worked as intended. So one other way that we can launch these clusters is to use our config files. And I'm not going to do that now. I just don't have time to wait another half an hour or so. These are the commands that you would use. So EKS-ctl, create node group, and then -- config file equals, and then you list out your config file. And same thing for the cluster. So if we did a managed node group, we would type in the min and max clusters that we would use. Our desired capacity is 2, so AWS would manage that for you. I'm going to delete this. So first I'm going to run this command EKS-ctl get cluster just to see what we have. Okay, so here's our one cluster. And now let's delete that. Whoops, what am I thinking? I forgot to change the name. That will be RyanDallas. All right, so it's gonna delete all these templates, and that will be the end of the tutorial.